The rain pounded mercilessly against the farmhouse windows as Elijah Morgan stared at the woman sitting across his weathered kitchen table. Her designer clothes were soaked and muddy, but there was something in her eyes, a determination he recognized from his own reflection years ago. "You don't understand," she said quietly, her fingers wrapped around the steaming moat of coffee. "I built that company from nothing. 17 years of my life, gone in a single board meeting." Elijah didn't know that tomorrow this stranger would save his farm with a single phone call. He didn't know she'd once commanded a corner office overlooking Silicon Valley. He didn't know that by taking in this stranded bee traveler, both their lives would change forever. Before we carry on, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit the subscribe button for something special tomorrow. Rain lashed against the windshield of Alexandra Reeves' Mercedes as she squinted through the darkness at the unfamiliar country road. The GPS had stopped working 20 minutes ago. Her cell phone showed no signal. And now, a sickening thump, followed by the telltale pull of the steering wheel, confirmed her worst fear. A flat tire. Perfect ending to the worst day of her life. 3 hours earlier, she had walked out of Pinnacle Tech headquarters for the last time, carrying nothing but her laptop bag and the framed photo of her late father. 12 years building the company from a startup in her garage to a billion-dollar tech giant. And just like that, the board had voted her out. Restructuring, they called it. New direction. What they meant was that they wanted her innovation without her principles, her creation without its creator. Alex pulled to the side of the road, turning on her hazard lights as the rain intensified. She opened the trunk, stared at the spare tire and jack, and laughed bitterly. In her 43 years, changing a tire was something she'd never needed to learn. There had always been someone to call, always a solution at her fingertips. But not tonight. Lightning flashed across the sky, briefly illuminating a gravel driveway about 50 yards ahead with a rusted mailbox. Morgan Farms, it read, barely visible through years of weather damage. Alex weighed her options. Sit in the car until morning, or seek help from whoever lived at the end of that drive. Pride told her to wait it out. Practicality pushed her forward. Elijah Morgan was about to turn in when he heard the knock at his door. At 35, he had grown accustomed to the quiet solitude of the farmhouse that had been in his family for 4 generations. The knock came again, more insistent this time. With a sigh, he set down the stack of overdue bills he'd been sorting through and went to the door. The woman on his porch was soaking wet, her dark hair plastered to her face, makeup smudged beneath her eyes. Despite this, there was something unmistakably polished about her, from the cut of her rain-soaked blazer to the way she stood tall despite her obvious discomfort. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said, her voice steady despite the chattering of her teeth. "My car has a flat tire about a half-mile down the road. I was hoping I could use your phone to call for assistance." Elijah hesitated. He'd disconnected his landline months ago to save money. Another casualty of the farm's declining fortunes. "I don't have a phone line anymore," he admitted, "and cell service is spotty at best." "Out here." The woman's shoulders sagged slightly. "I see. Perhaps I could trouble you for directions to the nearest town. I can walk if it's not too far." "Millfield is about 15 miles from here," Elijah said, noting how her expensive-looking shoes were caked with mud. "Not really walking distance, especially in this weather." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Look, I know this is unorthodox, but I have a spare room. You're welcome to stay the night, and I can help you with your tire in the morning when it's light out." Alex stared at the stranger, taking in his worn flannel shirt, the calluses on his hands, the honest fatigue in his eyes. In her world, people always wanted something from her: her money, her connections, her influence. This man didn't even know her name. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Morgan." Elijah Morgan. He stepped aside to let her in. "And it's not kindness, just common decency." Alex stepped into the farmhouse, immediately struck by its simplicity. The furniture was old but well kept, the wooden floors scuffed but clean. It was modest in a way that made her penthouse apartment in San Francisco seem grotesquely excessive. "I'm Alexandra Reeves," she said, deliberately omitting her former title. "Alex." For the first time in years, she introduced herself without someone recognizing her name, without seeing that flash of recognition followed by the calculation of what she could do for them. It felt strangely liberating. "Well, Alex, let me show you to the spare room. It's not much, but it's dry." As Elijah led her upstairs, Alex noticed the signs of financial struggle that her trained eye couldn't miss: the patched roof visible through a window, the careful way outdated appliances had been maintained rather than replaced, the empty nail holes where family heirlooms had likely been sold off. The spare room was small but clean, with a patchwork quilt on the bed and a small vase of wildflowers on the dresser. "Bathrooms across the hall," Elijah said. "I'll find you something dry to wear." When he returned with a faded flannel shirt and sweatpants, Alex thanked him with genuine gratitude. "I appreciate this more than you know, Mr. Morgan." "Elijah," he corrected. "And like I said, it's nothing. There's coffee downstairs when you're ready." After changing into the borrowed clothes that smelled of detergent and fresh air, Alex made her way back to the kitchen. Elijah was at the stove, stirring something that smelled delicious. "Hope you like beef stew," he said without turning around. "It's not fancy, but it's hot." Alex sat at the kitchen table, noticing the pile of papers Elijah had hastily stacked to one side. The top sheet was a bank notice, partially visible. "Final warning." She quickly looked away, respecting his privacy. "So, what brings you to the middle of nowhere on a night like this?" Elijah asked as he set a bowl of stew in front of her, along with a chunk of homemade bread. Alex hesitated. For the past decade, her identity had been inseparable from Pinnacle Tech. Who was she without that title? Without that company? Just a woman with a flat tire on a country road. The anonymity was strangely comforting. "I was between destinations," she said carefully. "Taking the scenic route, I guess." Elijah nodded, not pressing further. They ate in companionable silence, the rain drumming steadily on the roof above them. When they finished, Alex insisted on helping with the dishes, ignoring Elijah's protests. "I may be a guest, but I'm not helpless," she said, rolling up the sleeves of his borrowed shirt. As they worked side by side, Alex washing while Elijah dried, she found herself studying him. His hands were strong and weathered, his movements efficient. There was a quiet dignity about him that commanded respect. "So, this is your family farm?" she asked, hoping to shift attention away from herself. Elijah's face softened slightly. "5 generations of Morgans have worked this land. My great-great-grandfather started with just 20 acres and a dream. At our peak, we had over 300 acres and one of the most successful dairy operations in the county." "And now?" Alex asked, hearing the past tense in his voice. He set down the dish towel, his expression guarded. "Now we're down to the original 20 acres. Drought, changing markets, corporate competition. It's not easy for small farms these days." Alex nodded, thinking of the small farmers who had been suppliers for her company's cafeterias before cost-cutting measures had led to contracts with larger, cheaper providers. She'd signed off on those decisions, seen only numbers on a spreadsheet, not faces like Elijah's. "What do you grow?" she asked. "Used to be primarily dairy, but I've pivoted to organic vegetables and free-range eggs. Trying to find a niche that the big operations can't fill." He shrugged. "It's not enough, but I'm not ready to give up yet." The resilience in his voice resonated with something deep inside her. That morning, walking out of her company headquarters, she had felt utterly defeated. Yet here was this man, fighting against much worse odds, still standing. "Sometimes the hardest part is knowing when to hold on and when to let go," she said quietly. Elijah looked at her with unexpected understanding. "Sounds like you might know something about that." Their eyes met, a moment of recognition between two strangers at crossroads. "I should get some rest," Alex said finally. "Thank you again for your hospitality." "First thing tomorrow, I'll help you with that tire," Elijah promised. "Good night, Alex." In the small guest room, lying under the handmade quilt, Alex stared at the ceiling. For the first time since the board meeting, she allowed herself to cry, not just for the loss of her company, but for the person she had become while building it. Somewhere along the way, in the relentless pursuit of success, she had lost parts of herself she couldn't even name. The rain continued through the night, washing away the dirt from her designer shoes just as surely as it cleansed something deeper within her. Morning brought sunshine streaming through the curtains and the distant sound of a rooster. Alex blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous day came flooding back: the board meeting, the drive, the flat tire, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger. She dressed quickly in her Nowdry clothes, though she still looked rumpled and unkempt by her usual standards. Downstairs, she found the kitchen empty but a pot of coffee waiting. Through the window, she could see Elijah in the distance, moving among rows of vegetables with a practiced ease. Alex poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped outside. The farm looked different in the morning. Like modest but meticulously maintained, despite obvious financial constraints. A few dozen chickens pecked contentedly in a fenced area, while neat rows of various vegetables stretched toward a small orchard. Elijah looked up as she approached, wiping sweat from his brow. "Morning? Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years, actually," she admitted, surprised by the truth of it. "This is beautiful," she added, gesturing to the farm. "It's honest work," he said simply. "Your car's just down the road?" "Yes, but there's no rush." Alex stopped, realizing she had nowhere pressing to be. No meetings, no conference calls, no board to answer to. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I'd love to see more of your farm first, if that's all right." Surprise flickered across Elijah's face, but he nodded. "Sure, let me show you around." As they walked the property, Elijah explained his farming methods: organic, sustainable practices that prioritize soil health and biodiversity. Alex found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about crop rotation and natural pest control methods. "Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about beneficial insects," Elijah remarked with a small smile. "I find it fascinating," Alex replied honestly. "You're essentially creating a self-sustaining ecosystem." "Trying to," he corrected. "Nature always has the final say." They reached a small shed where Elijah kept tools and equipment. Inside, Alex noticed something unexpected: a sophisticated irrigation system control panel, clearly homemade but impressively designed. "Did you build this?" she asked, examining the wiring. Elijah nodded, somewhat self-conscious. "Engineering was actually my first love. I studied it in college before my father got sick and I had to come back to run the farm." "This is brilliant," Alex said, recognizing the ingenuity of the system. "You're monitoring soil moisture levels and automating water distribution based on need." "You know about irrigation systems?" he asked, clearly surprised. Alex hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "I used to work in tech. This kind of problem solving was my specialty." "It saves water and time," Elijah explained, pride evident in his voice. "I've been trying to modernize where I can afford to, but most tech solutions for agriculture are priced for operations 10 times my size." "Have you thought about marketing this system to other small farmers?" Alex asked, her mind already calculating potential markets and distribution channels. Elijah shrugged. "I've had a few neighbors ask about it, but I wouldn't know the first thing about turning it into a business. Besides, I barely have time to keep this place running." They continued their tour, stopping by the chicken coop where Elijah collected fresh eggs, then to the small greenhouse where seedlings were sprouting in neat rows. Throughout, Alex was struck by the thoughtfulness and innovation evident in every aspect of the operation, despite the clear financial limitations. By mid-morning, they finally made their way to Alex's stranded Mercedes. Elijah whistled low when he saw it. "That's quite a car." "It's just a car," Alex said, suddenly embarrassed by the luxury vehicle that had seemed so essential to her identity in the city. Elijah set to work changing the tire with practiced efficiency. As he worked, Alex found herself staring back at the farmhouse in the distance, thinking about the stark contrast between Elijah's life and her own. Here was a man who created something real, something tangible, while she had spent years in boardrooms and behind computer screens, increasingly disconnected from the real-world impact of her decisions. "All set," Elijah announced, tightening the last lug nut. It's just the spare, so you'll want to get a proper tire soon. There's a garage in Millfield that's honest, if overpriced. Ask for Sam. Tell him Elijah sent you. Thank you, Alex said, feeling strangely reluctant to burr. Leave. For everything. Elijah wiped his hands on a rag, looking slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. Like I said, just being decent. Decency seems in short supply these days, Alex replied. She hesitated, then pulled out her wallet. Please, let me compensate you for your hospitality. The moment the words left her mouth, she saw something change in Elijah's expression, a stiffening of his shoulders, a coolness entering his eyes. That's not necessary, he said firmly. I didn't help you for money. I didn't mean, Alex began, but Elijah had already turned away. Safe travels back to the city, he said over his shoulder. Take the main road north about 7 miles, then follow signs for the highway. Alex stood by her car, wallet still in hand, watching as Elijah walked back toward his farm without a backward glance. Something twisted uncomfortably in her chest, the realization that she had inadvertently insulted him, reducing their brief human connection to a transaction. It was how she had operated for so long that she hadn't even recognized the misstep. She got into her car and started the engine, but instead of pulling away, she sat there, watching Elijah's retreating figure. The board had accused her of being too rigid, too focused on metrics and bottom lines rather than people. Looking at her behavior just now, she could see their point. With sudden decision, Alex turned off the engine and got out of the car. She jogged to catch up with Elijah, who turned at the sound of her approach, his expression guarded. I'm sorry, she said without preamble. That was thoughtless of me. You showed me genuine kindness, and I tried to turn it into a business exchange. Elijah's expression softened slightly. It's all right. I'm sure that's how things work where you come from. That's not an excuse, Alex insisted. Look, I have nowhere to be today, or tomorrow, or honestly, for the foreseeable future. Would it be okay if I stayed a little longer? I could help around the farm. I'm not completely useless, despite appearances. Surprise registered on Elijah's face. You want to stay and work on a farm? In those clothes? Alex looked down at her designer suit and expensive shoes, then back up with a self-deprecating smile. I'm a quick learner, and I have it on good authority that you have some very comfortable sweatpants I could borrow. For the first time, Elijah laughed a genuine sound that transformed his serious features. I've got chores that need doing and not enough hands to do them. If you're serious, I won't turn down the help. I'm serious, Alex said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The thought of returning to her empty penthouse, to the inevitable calls from former colleagues offering sympathy while angling for gossip, held no appeal. Here, at least, she was just Alex, not the fallen CEO of Pinnacle Tech. Well then, Elijah said, extending his hand. Welcome to Morgan Farms, temporary farmhand. Alex shook his hand, feeling calluses against her smooth palm. Pleased to be here, boss. The next few days fell into a rhythm that was entirely foreign to Alex's previous life. She woke with the sunrise, pulled on borrowed jeans and flannel shirts that Elijah found in a box of his sister's old clothes, and joined him for a simple breakfast before the day's work began. Elijah assigned her tasks that matched her abilities, organizing the tool shed, helping to harvest ripened vegetables, collecting eggs from the chicken coop. The physical labor was exhausting, but satisfying in a way that 12-hour days behind a desk had never been. At night, she fell into bed with aching muscles and slept deeply without the aid of the prescription sleep aids she'd relied on for years. On the third day, as they worked side by side, sorting tomatoes for the farmer's market, Elijah broke their comfortable silence. So, are you going to tell me what you're running from? Alex's hand stilled on a perfectly ripe heirloom tomato. What makes you think I'm running from something? People don't usually abandon their luxury cars and designer lives to pick vegetables unless they're avoiding something worse, he observed mildly. Alex sighed, setting down the tomato. I guess I owe you that much honesty. I was the CEO of a technology company, a successful one. Until 3 days ago, when the board of directors decided I was no longer the right person to lead it. Elijah whistled low. That's rough. Any warning? There were signs I chose to ignore, Alex admitted. Disagreements about direction, pressure to prioritize quick profits over long-term innovation. I built that company from nothing, and I thought that meant something. It does mean something, Elijah said firmly. Just not to people who only see dollar signs. Alex looked at him, struck by the simple truth of his words. Exactly. Anyway, I was driving aimlessly when I got the flat tire, no real destination in mind. And you ended up here, Elijah concluded. Not exactly a corporate penthouse. No, Alex agreed, with a small smile. Much better views, though. They resumed sorting tomatoes, the confession having shifted something between them. Later that afternoon, as Alex helped Elijah load crates into his ancient pickup truck for the next day's farmer's market, she noticed him wincing as he lifted a particularly heavy box. "Are you hurt?" she asked, immediately moving to take the weight. Elijah shook his head, but the tightness around his eyes betrayed him. Old injury. Acts up sometimes. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Alex broached the subject again. "How did you hurt your back?" Elijah took a sip from his glass of homemade lemonade before answering. "Tractor accident 4 years ago. The medical bills are part of what put the farm in the red." "No health insurance?" Alex asked, already knowing the answer. "Couldn't afford the premiums," he said with a shrug. "Farm income is too unpredictable." Alex thought about the comprehensive health benefits she'd provided for even the lowest-level employees at Pinnacle Tech, and how many small business owners and self-employed individuals struggled with the same issue as Elijah. "What about your family?" she asked. "You mentioned a sister. Sarah lives in Chicago with her husband and kids. Has a good job in advertising." There was pride in his voice, but also a hint of something else, perhaps loneliness. "She helps out when she can, but she has her own life." "And your parents?" "And Dad passed 6 years ago. Heart attack. Mom couldn't bear to stay on the farm after that. She lives in Florida now, remarried to a retired dentist." He smiled faintly. "They're happy, which is what matters." "So, it's just you keeping the Morgan legacy alive," Alex observed. Elijah nodded, looking out over the fields that were bathed in golden evening light. "Someone has to," he said simply. The responsibility in those 3 words resonated deeply with Alex. How many times had she felt the same way about Pinnacle Tech? Someone had to maintain the vision, protect the culture she'd built, ensure that the company remained true to its founding principles. In the end, that dedication hadn't been enough to save her position, just as Elijah's commitment might not be enough to save his farm. "What will happen if you can't make the mortgage payments?" she asked gently. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "There's a development company that's been buying up failing farms in the area. They want to build luxury vacation homes, rustic retreats for city folk looking for weekend countryside experiences." The contempt in his voice was evident. "They've made offers before, but I've always refused." "But now?" Alex pressed. "Now, I'm running out of options," he admitted. The organic certification helps command better prices at the farmers' markets, but the profit margins are still slim. One bad season, one equipment failure, and that's it. Alex thought about the irrigation system he'd designed, the ingenious solutions he'd implemented throughout the farm with minimal resources. "Have you considered diversifying, finding additional revenue streams?" Elijah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "With what capital? Banks won't lend to a farm this size that's already leveraged to the hilt." "What about grants? There are programs specifically for sustainable agriculture and small farms. The application processes are designed for people with more time and education than I have," he said, not bitterly, but matter-of-factly. "I've tried. The paperwork alone is a full-time job." Alex fell silent, her mind racing. At Pinnacle Tech, she had employed teams of people whose sole responsibility was navigating such bureaucratic challenges, securing grants, tax incentives, favorable loans. Elijah was trying to do it all himself, while simultaneously running every aspect of the farm's operations. "What if I helped you?" she offered suddenly. "With the grant applications, I mean. That sort of thing was part of my job." Elijah looked at her skeptically. Why would you do that? Because I believe in what you're doing here, Alex said honestly. Because your irrigation system alone could transform water usage for small farms if it were widely adopted. Because, she hesitated, then continued. Because helping you would mean I'm still creating something worthwhile, even if I'm not in that corner office anymore. Elijah studied her face for a long moment, as if searching for ulterior motives. Finally, he nodded. I appreciate the offer, but I should warn you, it's probably a lost cause. I've built something from nothing before, Alex said with quiet determination. Maybe lightning can strike twice. The next morning, after helping Elijah load the truck for the farmer's market, Alex settled at the kitchen table with her laptop, the one possession she'd brought from her old life. While Elijah was in town selling his produce, she immersed herself in research, identifying potential grants, loans, and programs that could benefit Morgan farms. By the time Elijah returned in the late afternoon, she had compiled a comprehensive list of opportunities, complete with deadlines, requirements, and estimated chances of success. How was the market? She asked as he came through the door, looking tired but satisfied. Sold out of everything, he reported, setting a cloth bag on the counter. Saved you some strawberries. They're the last of the season. The simple gesture touched her more deeply than any expensive gift she'd ever received. Thank you. I've been working on some ideas I'd like to show you. Over Danira's simple meal of fresh vegetables and homemade berdaleks outlined her findings. There's a sustainable agriculture grant from the state that I think you'd be perfect for. It focuses on water conservation innovations, and your irrigation system is exactly what they're looking for. Elijah listened skeptically at first, but as she explained the details and her strategy for the application, his interest grew. The deadline is in 2 weeks, he noted, looking at her notes. That's not much time. I can help you prepare everything, Alex offered. We'd need to document your system, gather data on water savings, project potential impact if implemented at scale. And if we don't get it, there are other options, Alex said, flipping to another page of her notes. This federal program for small farm diversification, or this private foundation that supports organic farming initiatives. We can apply for multiple opportunities, increase our chances. Elijah raised an eyebrow at her use of "are," but didn't comment on it. Instead, he asked, How long would all this take? Alex hesitated. To do it right? A few weeks at minimum. And you're offering to stay here and help with this? The disbelief in his voice was evident. Don't you have a life to get back to? Right now, this feels more important than anything waiting for me in the city, Alex admitted. Besides, I have a 3-month severance package. I might as well use that time for something meaningful. Elijah was quiet for a long moment, weighing her offer. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, we'll give it a shot. But I can't pay you, and I can't promise anything will come of it. I'm not asking for payment, Alex assured him. Just a place to stay, and maybe continued access to those incredible strawberries. That drew a reluctant smile from Elijah. Deal. The next few weeks established a new routine. Mornings were devoted to farm work. Alex, insisting on continuing to help with daily chores, despite her new focus on the grant applications. Afternoons and evenings were spent at the kitchen table, the two of them poring over paperwork, drafting proposals, and preparing documentation. Alex was impressed by Elijah's quick grasp of concepts that had taken her MBA classmates months to understand. He might lack formal business training, but his intelligence and practical problem-solving abilities were evident in every discussion. You should have been an engineer, she remarked one evening as they reviewed the technical specifications of his irrigation system. In another life, maybe, he said with a shrug. This farm has been my responsibility since I was 23. Not much room for might-have-beens. Do you regret it? Alex asked. Giving up your dreams to take over the family business? Elijah considered the question seriously. Sometimes, he admitted. Especially on days when everything breaks at once and the bills keep piling up. But then there are mornings when the sun rises over fields I've tended with my own hands, and I know exactly why I'm here. Alex thought about her own career, path of sacrifices she'd made, the relationships she'd neglected, all in pursuit of building pinnacle tech. Had there been moments of pure satisfaction that made it all worthwhile? Yes, but they had grown fewer and farther between as the company expanded and the pressures increased. I think we often convince ourselves that sacrifice equals virtue, she said thoughtfully. That giving up happiness now will lead to greater happiness later, but sometimes later never comes. Speaking from experience? Elijah asked, his eyes meeting hers across the table. Alex nodded, surprised by her own candor. I sacrificed a lot for my company. Relationships, family, any semblance of work-life balance. I told myself it was temporary, that once we hit certain milestones, I'd make time for the rest of life. But there was always another milestone, another target, another quarter to close strong. And now? Now I wonder if I missed the point entirely, Alex said softly. If building something that could be taken away from me in a single board meeting was worth all those sacrifices. Elijah was quiet for a moment, then offered, maybe the value wasn't in what you built, but in who you became while building it. The insight struck Alex deeply. Who would she become? The woman who first started Pinnacle Tech in her garage had been idealistic, passionate about using technology to solve real-world problems. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been compromised, diluted by pressure from investors, competition, and the relentless drive for growth. I'm not sure I like who I became, she confessed. The board called me inflexible, out of touch. Maybe they were right. Or maybe you were the only one still holding on to the original vision, Elijah suggested. Sometimes principles look like stubbornness to people who've lost sight of them. His words resonated with something deep inside here, a validation of the stands she'd taken, the battles she'd fought and ultimately lost. For the first time since her ousting, Alex felt not just grief for what she'd lost, but pride in what she'd tried to protect. As the grant application deadline approached, they worked with increasing intensity. Alex reached out to former colleagues who specialized in sustainable agriculture technology, securing expert reviews of Elijah's irrigation system. One particularly valuable connection was Dr. Mei Chen, who had consulted for Pinnacle Tech on environmental impact assessments. She's willing to do a virtual evaluation tomorrow, Alex told Elijah one evening, looking up from her email. Her endorsement would significantly strengthen our application. Elijah nodded, though he looked uncomfortable. Do you have to tell her who I am? I mean, my background? Alex studied him curiously. Why wouldn't I? He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. I don't have the credentials most of these experts expect. No advanced degrees, no published research. You have something better, Alex insisted. Practical innovation born from necessity. That's worth more than any degree. The next day, Dr. Chen spent nearly 2 hours on a video call, examining Elijah's irrigation system through Alex's laptop camera. Her enthusiasm grew as Elijah explained each component, the problems it solved, and the efficiency gains it provided. This is remarkable, Dr. Chen said finally, particularly considering the resource constraints you're working with. Have you considered applying for a patent? Elijah looked startled by the suggestion. I always thought patents were for big companies and professional inventors. That's a common misconception, Dr. Chen replied. This system could be valuable to thousands of small farms facing similar water management challenges. I'd be happy to help you explore the patent process. After the call ended, Elijah sat in stunned silence. She really thinks it's worth patenting? Of course it is, Alex said, surprised by his doubt. I've been telling you that for weeks. There's a difference between encouragement from a friend and professional validation, he pointed out. Alex felt a curious warmth at being called a friend. When had that happened? When had she transitioned from stranded traveler to friend? And why did the designation feel so important? As the day of the grant application deadline arrived, they worked through the night to finalize every detail. Alex drew on all her experience crafting compelling business proposals, while Elijah contributed authentic passion and practical insights that no amount of corporate polish could simulate. At 11:58 p.m., they submitted the application, along with Dr. Chen's glowing evaluation and comprehensive documentation of the irrigation system's effectiveness. Exhausted but satisfied, They collapsed onto the porch swing, watching as the moon cast silver light across the fields. "We did it," Alex said, feeling a sense of accomplishment that rivaled anything she'd experienced in the corporate world. "We did," Elijah agreed. "Now we wait. 6 weeks for the initial review." Alex nodded. "But we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. Tomorrow we start on the federal program application." Elijah chuckled. "You never stop, do you?" "Apparently not," Alex admitted. "It's both my greatest strength and my worst flaw, according to my last performance review." "I think it's admirable," Elijah said quietly. "The way you throw yourself completely into whatever you're doing. When you first arrived, I thought you were just another city person who sees farmers as quaint relics, but you've worked harder than some farmhands I've hired." "I've always believed that anything worth doing is worth doing completely," Alex said. "Besides, I've learned more here in a few weeks than I did in years of board meetings." "Like what?" Elijah asked, genuinely curious. "That real value isn't always reflected in balance sheets. That sometimes the most innovative solutions come from having less, not more. That—" She hesitated, then continued softly, "that connections with people matter more than connections with networks." Their eyes met in the moonlight, and Alex felt a shift between them, a recognition of something neither had acknowledged. Before either could speak, the moment was broken by the distant sound of a vehicle coming up the drive. Elijah frowned, checking his watch. "It's nearly midnight. Who would be visiting at this hour?" They rose from the porch swing as headlights illuminated the farmhouse. A sleek black SUV pulled up, and a woman stepped out, tall, elegantly dressed, with an air of confident authority that seemed out of place in the rural setting. "Is that someone you know?" Elijah asked, tensing slightly beside Alex. Alex felt her stomach drop as recognition dawned. "Unfortunately, yes. That's Victoria Hargrove, Pinnacle Tech's Chief Operating Officer." "What's she doing here?" "I have no idea," Alex replied, though a knot of dread was forming in her stomach. "But I doubt it's a social call." Victoria approached the porch, her designer heels sinking slightly into the gravel drive. Her gaze swept over the farmhouse, the fields beyond, and finally settled on Alex, with an expression that mingled relief and calculation. "Alexandra," she said, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency that had made her an effective CLO. "You're a difficult woman to find." "That was rather the point, Victoria," Alex replied coolly. "How did you locate me?" Victoria climbed the porch steps, her eyes flicking briefly to Elijah before returning to Alex. "Your car's GPS. The company still pays the subscription." She extended a manicured hand toward Elijah. "Victoria Hargrove, Pinnacle Tech. Elijah Morgan," he replied, shaking her hand briefly. His posture had stiffened, and Alex could sense his discomfort with this intrusion. "Mr. Morgan, would you mind if I spoke with Alexandra privately?" Victoria asked, her tone making it clear she expected compliance. To Alex's surprise, Elijah didn't budge. "This is my home, Miss Hargrove. Alex is my guest. Whatever you need to say can be said in front of both of us, or not at all." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly at his resistance. She turned to Alex with a questioning look. "It's okay," Alex assured Elijah. "Victoria and I go back a long way." To Victoria, she added, "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of Elijah." Victoria sighed, reaching into her designer handbag and withdrawing a tablet. "Fine. The board wants you back, Alexandra. They've realized they made a mistake." The statement hung in the night air like a thunderclap. Alex felt herself freeze, certain she had misheard. "Excuse me? The stock has dropped 18% since news of your departure went public," Victoria explained, her tone matter-of-fact. "Key clients are threatening to walk. 3 senior engineers have already resigned in protest. The board held an emergency meeting yesterday." She handed the tablet to Alex, displaying a formal letter with the Pinnacle Tech letterhead. "They're offering to reinstate you as CEO with increased autonomy and a substantial compensation package." Alex stared at the document, her mind racing. Just weeks ago, this would have been everything she wanted: vindication, restoration, triumph over those who had doubted her vision. Yet now, standing on this porch beside Elijah, The offer stirred more confusion than jubilation. "Why now?" she asked finally. "What's changed?" Reality hit them in the face, Victoria said bluntly. The new direction they wanted to take. Faster growth, more aggressive monetization. It's alienating the user base you built. Turns out your stubborn commitment to user privacy and ethical data practices was actually good for business. Alex handed the tablet back without scrolling further. "And what about you, Victoria? Last I checked, you voted with the rest of the board to remove me." Victoria had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I made a calculation error. I thought the company could maintain its trajectory without your particular approach to leadership. I was wrong." The admission, coming from the supremely confident Victoria Hargrove, was stunning. Alex felt Elijah shift beside her, a silent presence offering support. "The board is prepared to announce your return at tomorrow's press conference," Victoria continued. "I have a car waiting to take you back to the city tonight. The corporate jet is on standby at the regional airport." Alex looked at Victoria, impeccably dressed, urgently efficient, representing everything about the life she had left behind. Then she glanced at Elijah, in his worn flannel shirt and work boots, quiet dignity in his stance. Two worlds colliding on a farmhouse porch under a star-filled sky. "I need time to think," Alex said, finally. Victoria frowned. "Alexandra, this offer isn't indefinite. The press conference can wait," Alex interrupted firmly. "If they want me back badly enough, they can wait until I've made my decision." Victoria looked ready to argue, then seemed to recalculate. "Fine. 24 hours. I'll stay at the hotel in town." She glanced around doubtfully. "I assume there's a hotel?" "The Millfield Inn," Elijah supplied. "About 15 miles south. Can't miss it." Victoria nodded crisply. "I'll expect your answer by this time tomorrow, Alexandra." She turned to go, then paused. "Whatever rustic charm you found here, remember what you built. Remember who you are." As Victoria's SUV disappeared down the drive, Alex and Elijah remained on the porch in silence. Finally, Elijah spoke. "So, CEO of Pinnacle Tech. That's a bit more significant than just worked in tech." Alex winced at the understatement. "I should have told you the whole truth. I'm sorry." "Why didn't you?" His voice held no accusation, just genuine curiosity. Alex considered the question carefully. At first, it was the relief of anonymity. Then, as time passed, "I was afraid it would change how you saw me, that you'd treat me differently if you knew." "And how did I treat you?" Elijah asked quietly. "Like a person," Alex said simply. "Not a title, or a balance sheet, or a business connection. Just me." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, before Elijah spoke again. "What are you going to do?" It was the million-dollar question. Alex leaned against the porch railing, looking out at the farm bathed in moonlight. "A month ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity without hesitation. Everything I worked for, vindication for my approach, the company back under my control." She shook her head. "Now, I'm not so sure." "Because of the farm?" Elijah asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Partly," Alex admitted. "I believe in what we're doing here. The grant applications, your irrigation system, there's real potential to help people. But Pinnacle Tech helps people too, in its way," Elijah pointed out. "On a much larger scale." Alex smiled faintly. "Playing devil's advocate?" "Just making sure you consider all sides before making a decision you might regret," he replied. "This farm will still be here if you go back to being CEO. The grants we've applied for don't require your physical presence." "So you think I should take the offer?" Alex asked, surprised by the tension she felt awaiting his answer. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "I think you should do what brings you fulfillment, not just success. Sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're not." His words echoed in her mind as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of the guest room that had somehow become her room over the past weeks. The decision before her wasn't just about a job title or a company yet, was about who she wanted to be and the life she wanted to create. Morning came too quickly. Alex found Elijah already in the kitchen, coffee brewing and breakfast on the stove. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked as she entered. "Too much thinking," she admitted, accepting the mug he offered. They ate in comfortable silence, the weight of the impending decision hanging between them. After breakfast, Elijah disappeared to tend to the morning chores, giving her space to think. Alex sat on the porch, tablet in hand, reviewing the board's offer in detail. The terms were everything she could have asked. For increased autonomy, protection from another board coup, substantial equity. Yet something held her back from immediate acceptance. She was still sitting there when Elijah returned from the fields. He sat beside her, not speaking, his presence a comfort rather than an intrusion. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," Alex said finally. "About fulfillment versus success." Elijah nodded, waiting for her to continue. "When I started Pinnacle Tech, it was because I genuinely believed technology could solve real problems and improve lives," Alex explained. "Somewhere along the way, growth became the goal rather than the means. I got caught up in metrics and valuations and forgot to ask whether we were still fulfilling our original purpose." "And now?" Elijah prompted gently. "Now I'm wondering if there's a third option," Alex said, an idea taking shape as she spoke. "What if I don't have to choose between returning to Pinnacle Tech or staying here? What if there's a way to connect these two worlds?" Elijah looked intrigued. "I'm listening. Your irrigation system has the potential to transform water usage for small farms across the country," Alex said, excitement building in her voice. "But developing and distributing it requires resources, expertise, manufacturing capabilities. Things Pinnacle Tech has in abundance. You want Pinnacle Tech to develop agricultural technology?" Elijah asked skeptically. "Not exactly," Alex clarified. "I want to launch a new division focused on sustainable agricultural technology, with your system as the flagship product. We've been looking to diversify beyond our core offerings anyway, and this aligns perfectly with our mission of using technology to solve real-world problems." End quote. Elijah considered this, his expression thoughtful. "And where do I fit into this plan?" "As a partner," Alex said without hesitation. "Your expertise in both engineering and practical farming is exactly what would make this venture authentic and effective. We'd develop your system for mass production, create additional tools based on your insights, and reach farmers who are struggling with the same challenges you face." End quote. "You want me to leave the farm?" There was a note of reluctance in his voice. "No," Alex said firmly. "The farm would be our testing ground, our proof of concept. You'd split your time between here and the city. We'd bring engineers here to learn from you, to understand the real conditions these systems need to work in." The idea expanded as she spoke, possibilities unfolding. "We could create an incubator for agricultural technology, bringing together engineers and farmers to solve problems collaboratively, rather than imposing tech solutions from the outside." Elijah was quiet for a long moment, and Alex held her breath. Finally, he spoke. "It's an intriguing idea. But what about the ownership of the technology? I've heard stories about large companies taking innovations from small creators." "We'd structure it as a true partnership," Alex assured him. "Your name on the patents, equitable revenue sharing, meaningful input on all decisions. I wouldn't do this any other way." "And the board would agree to this?" Elijah asked, understandably skeptical. "They're desperate to have me back," Alex said with a confidence she hadn't felt in weeks. "And diversification into sustainable technologies has been on our strategic roadmap for years. This accelerates that goal with a market-ready innovation and authentic expertise." Elijah stood, walking to the edge of the porch, to look out over his fields. "I never imagined anything like this," he admitted. "The farm has always been my whole world." "It still can be," Alex said, joining him. "But it could also be the beginning of something that helps countless other family farms survive and thrive." The sun was high in the sky when Victoria's SUV returned, precisely 24 hours after her departure. She approached the porch with an expectant expression, tablet in hand. "Have you made your decision?" she asked without preamble. Alex nodded. "I have, but it comes with conditions." Victoria's expression tightened slightly. "The board has already been extremely generous, Alexandra." "This isn't about compensation," Alex clarified. "It's about direction. If I come back, Pinnacle Tech will be launching a new division, focused on sustainable agricultural technology, with significant investment and resources. Victoria blinked in surprise. Agricultural technology? That's outside our core competencies. Exactly, Alex agreed. Which is why we'll be partnering with Morgan Farms as our development and testing facility, with Elijah Morgan as a full partner in the venture. Victoria's gaze shifted to Elijah, reassessing him with new interest. I see. And what does Mr. Morgan bring to this partnership? Engineering innovation, practical expertise, and authentic connection to our target market, Alex replied confidently. Plus a patent-pending irrigation system that could revolutionize water conservation for small farms nationwide. To her credit, Victoria adapted quickly, her analytical mind already calculating the business implications. The board will have questions. I'll answer them all, Alex assured her. But this is non-negotiable. Pinnacle Tech needs to expand beyond our current markets, and this represents a perfect opportunity to enter the agricultural technology space with a truly innovative product and approach. Victoria studied Alex for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I believe you could sell this to the board. They're motivated to have you back. And the business case is sound if the technology is as promising as you claim. It is, Elijah spoke up, his voice steady. And there's potential for an entire ecosystem of related innovations. Victoria extended her hand to him, her manner markedly different from their first meeting. Then it seems we have a partnership to discuss, Mr. Morgan. As they shook hands, Alex felt a surge of certainty that she had found the right path, not a return to her old life, not an escape to a new one, but a bridge between two worlds that needed each other. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Alex's return to Pinnacle Tech was announced to thunderous applause from employees and a significant recovery in the stock price. The new agricultural technology division, branded as TerraTech, was met with enthusiasm from investors who recognized the market potential and appreciated the company's expansion into sustainability-focused ventures. Elijah divided his time between the farm and the city, initially uncomfortable in the corporate environment, but gradually finding his voice as engineers and developers sought his input on practical applications and real-world conditions. His irrigation system, now